Let's jump into it. So today I wanted to discuss, over the last 5 years, a lot of people have gained equity in their home,
Yeah.
or people that have owned their home for 10 years, and your primary residence for most people is their largest asset.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, most people just have a lot of equity. They don't use it for anything. So what I
Right.
wanted to talk about is how could someone tap into their equity to buy an investment property, a second home, maybe
To
an
leverage,
Airbnb, to leverage the equity to be able to, again, either buy a second home or buy an investment property.
Yeah. So there's actually two routes to this, right? If you are wanting to build a real estate portfolio, right? If that is your goal,
Right.
if that's your next move, the first investment property we tell people, consider turning your current property into your rental and doing a move up.
Okay.
And make the new property your primary residence, because right now it's really easy to cash flow that what is the current residence.
Right.
It's at a really low rate. You probably have a great payment, and you don't need 20% down to go buy that next property. You only need 5%.
That makes a lot of sense.
So that's the first thing that we always say, like, let's explore that. But say your current residence is the property you love. It is your right property. Your kids are in school, it's your neighborhood, it's your community. And now you want to start a portfolio and you don't want to make that move to a new property. You can leverage the equity that you have in your current house to buy the next property. You can do a home equity line of credit to get the down payment for that next home.
Now, do you just have to, is that the only way to do it, is the line of credit? Or can you is there any situation where you could do a cross collateral loan?
You can. They are not cheap.
Okay.
They are not cheap. You can do a bridge loan where you're shifting money from one to the other. If we are working with a client who cannot qualify in a traditional format, that starts to make sense.
Okay.
Because then you're already in not a traditional paper loan anyway. So then if we're making that shift, it's sixes. If you can qualify for that new property, which, keep in mind, people don't realize this. People are really surprised that they can qualify for an investment property, but you get to use the potential rent on the new property to qualify. So
do you still have to have a lease in place, or what's the rule on?
If you are buying it, if you're just now acquiring it, you do not need a lease in place. We do a rent analysis as part of the appraisal. The appraiser vouches for what the property can be rented for.
Wow. So when did that change? Because if
you've owned the property, if you already own it and you're trying to finance something, you have to have a lease.
Got it.
So there's that window. Yes, there's this window at the very beginning when you're just buying the property.
Got it.
If you're trying to move financing on an existing rental, you have to have a rental.
What about if I want to Airbnb the new property?
There are lenders who will do that. They are not traditional lending, but there are lenders, and people don't even realize this. There are lenders that you don't even have to qualify. They'll lend based on the mortgage payment being no higher than what the rent is. A 1-to-1 ratio. If you've got a $1,500 mortgage payment and you can rent it for $1,500, you have a loan. Very honestly, 20 to 25% down, just like you would have on any investment property financing. The rate is slightly different, but not outrageously. So for my self-employed borrowers, right, who have multiple companies and it's just complicated and they just don't want to dig into that,
right,
that can be an option. And those actually allow you to close the loan in your LLC. So you are still personally securing the loan, but you can close it in the name of the LLC.
Got it. Now, what if I am just more looking at, I want to buy before I sell? So I'm not actually going to keep the home that I'm in.
Yeah.
I just, inventory, even though it's picked up, is still low. I want to make sure I've secured that. I don't want to be a contingent buyer. And so how does that work? How would a buy before you sell program work?
So there's a couple of ways. Some of my clients can actually do it without a buy before you sell. If you have 5% down and you can qualify for both mortgages, which we do see, we have clients who can do that because their payment on that original property is so low. If you can do that, that's an easy way to do it. And you just know that you're going to pay down that new mortgage with the proceeds from the sale of your home at the time that it sells. And when you do that, not only can you pay down the principal, you can have your payment, they call it a recast, you have your payment re-amortized over the remaining
really?
term of the loan. So often we map that out for
Right.
people. Like, okay, so day one when you close, here's your payment. You sell 60 days later, you pay down this chunk of proceeds, and they re-amortize it, and here's your new payment.
Okay,
and
so you're not stuck at the payment
right
when you only put 5%.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And you can drop mortgage insurance immediately, all the things.
Got it.
So that is one way to do it, and that is the more cost-effective way to do it. Having said that, there are lots of options right now where it's a buy before you sell. Like they literally lend the money on the new property based on you having equity in your property. So they'll go up to 75% of your current value, typically, minus whatever you owe on the property. They'll give you that in cash to go to the next property. And you are tying up both properties.
Right.
Right, in that lien.
Do you ever see people, or can you do it with just a home equity? So I go, maybe I already have a home equity.
Lots
can I
of
just
times.
Draw on that, use that for the 5%
We closed one
down payment?
earlier this week, yes,
Okay.
where the client, he can qualify. He did not have 5% sitting in his bank account. He took 5% out of his home equity line, put it forward on the next, and he will turn around and list his home. But that is a great idea for a client who they're looking for something so specific.
Got it.
That they do not want to put their house on the market before they find that perfect home.
Yep. Any other challenges that you run into when someone's buying that first investment property, or what should they know on the lending side as far as being able to qualify for a second home?
Yeah. So keep in mind when you're buying investment properties, you have to have reserves. So not only do you need your down payment or your funds for closing, you are typically expected to have at least 6 months of that new mortgage payment in a reserve account. You don't have to bring those funds into closing. It can be in a 401k or some of your IRAs allow for it. You have to be able to document that if you were in hardship, you could pull the money out. And that can be counted. But it is something important to know because sometimes we have clients who are pulling every penny they can get to that 20%. You have to have a plan for your reserves.
Okay. And then if I am keeping my current residence to buy the next one, are there still 10% down programs available, or do I need to plan on 20 to 25?
If you are buying, you're moving to the next one?
No. So if I'm going to stay and I'm just buying,
technically you only need 15%, but it is outrageously expensive. We never tell a client to do that. You're going to want 20% down at least. And something everyone should know is if you can come up with 25% down, your rate is almost the same as a conforming loan or as a primary residence.
Yeah.
The gap gets much smaller.
Well, and I love that. I mean, if you have that kind of equity and you have the 3%, that property is going to cash flow so much better than even a 25%, 7% investor loan. Typically, how many points are your investor loans running higher than?
If you have good credit, if you have and by good credit, let me say that has changed over the years, right? It used to be 700 was the golden. Now I would say 740.
Oh, wow.
If you've got a 740, 760, your rate's about a half point higher than a primary residence.
Okay. So cool. Anything else you'd tell us?
No.
Okay, awesome.
Those are the important things.
Thanks again for taking time today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to help.